to New York State of Mind here on Com Radio. We're back from the break, and there's some college football to talk about here. Let's start with Notre Dame and Boston College. We talked about a lot last week, and Notre Dame is a team that I think coming this year, people anticipated they'd be good, but they've honestly really exceeded expectations. Excuse me, and beat a pretty good BC team who, I think is a lot better than, people think. And, Ian Book played another good game. Um, you know, had 280 yards through the air, had 85 yards on the ground, accounted for 4 touchdowns. Listen, Notre Dame right now 8-0, undefeated in conference play, obviously. Beat Clemson a week ago. I'm going to ask you again, Pat. Is this a team we really need to start considering as a real national championship contender?
Just like I said, I can't believe that we're sitting here saying Penn State is 0-4. I can't believe I'm saying this, but yes, we have to consider Notre Dame as a legit national championship contender. I am not saying that they will win the national championship, but to sit here and say that they're not in the mix would be inappropriate. This team is obviously undefeated. They beat Clemson, though Clemson didn't have Trevor Lawrence. But you got to give credit where credit's due. In years past, they haven't played the strongest competition. And when they were in the playoffs, they didn't exactly compete to the highest level. Most recently, getting sort of blown out by Clemson in their last playoff appearance. But listen, they have some playmakers. Ian Book, like we've talked about, I don't think he's going to play on Sundays. I don't think he's an NFL quarterback, but he's tough and he can win you games. I really like their running back Kyron Williams. I really think that he could excel at the next level. They've got some playmakers on the outside. I think it's that guy Davis. I forgot what number 11's name is. I'm blanking out.
Avery Davis. Yep.
Avery Davis, and they also have that big receiver. I don't know how to pronounce his name, but number 11. He's really good in the red zone, coming out with jump balls. And I really like Michael Mayer, their tight end, true freshman. They've got some playmakers on the offensive side of the ball, which I feel like hasn't really been the case with them in years past. It usually has just been sort of run the ball and play good defense. But, obviously Brian Kelly is going to have a defense that is tough and respectable. And that's, again, the case this year. So, listen, I think this is a complete football team, and they do have a shot to win the national championship this year. I'm not saying I'd put my money on them, and I would favor Clemson with a healthy Trevor Lawrence and a healthy defense over them. But you can't ignore them. I got to give credit where credit's due.
You summed it up perfectly. Listen, they're number 2 and undefeated in the nation and beat, the Clemson Tigers. We're talking about one of the most elite programs in college football over the last few years. Ian Book, to his credit, has played at a really high level the last couple of weeks. They're scoring points. Their defense is tough. It has been a weird season, but, Notre Dame's been, surprisingly good. They've been a lot better than a lot of people anticipated. And, they definitely have to be in the conversation. There's no question about it. And we'll see. They got some games coming up that should be interesting. I'm keeping an eye on next week. They're at North Carolina. That's going to be kind of their last test to see if they can really, play with the big dogs. But they've been really good. They've been impressive. And, we'll see where they go. Now, another team I want to talk about is a potential contender who I think everyone thought would be a pretty good team, but, is the Florida Gators coming off a dominating win over Arkansas, who, Arkansas is not, too bad this year, like in years past. Kyle Trask with a huge game once again. I don't know, man. When I watch Florida, I kind of I get the same kind of feeling that I got about a little bit with
Oklahoma.
Yeah, a little bit, but I'll just say that their offense though really does have some big time NFL talent on it for sure. Kyle Trask is a legit first round quarterback. Grimes had a huge game. I know they have Tony, who's been really good for them, really explosive. They got playmakers all over the field. Their defense hasn't been great, but if you're scoring 63 points, who are you really losing to? I'm gonna ask you the same question, but I'm gonna preface this a little bit differently, just because They do have to play Alabama, and Alabama has looked like the best team in the nation this year. Can Florida beat Bama? Can they be the SEC champions and find themselves in the playoffs?
They can. However, I do get Oklahoma vibes here. Their offense is without a doubt explosive. As you said, Trask has been really great. Dan Mullen has put him in the position to succeed, to say the least. Obviously, Kyle Pitts has been a monster this year, 8 touchdowns already in just 6 games. Pierce, their running back, has been impressive as well. They have a great offense, but just where I get worried is that defense of theirs, because they have given up points. They gave up 38 to A&M. They gave up 28 to Georgia, who with Stetson Bennett, I mean, I'm really not too impressed with their offense. They gave up 35 to Arkansas, even though Arkansas is not that bad. But I am worried about their offense and how it will hold up against a top tier program like Bama, because with Saban, man, he's going to be able to get you to punt a couple times throughout the game. That's just how Alabama is. So I do think they can compete with Bama just because their offense is so explosive, but I wouldn't favor them just because I haven't seen enough out of their defense this far in the season.
I mean, yeah, ultimately their defense, the fewest points they have allowed in a game this season was 24, which that's not great. And I think that even with LSU last year, which their defense was by no means something to get too excited about. It was a bad defense, but they even had some games where they stepped up and shut down a team.
They had a lot of playmakers on that ball.
Right.
On the side of the ball.
And Florida just doesn't, like you said, they definitely give me Oklahoma vibes, where, as I think it was Stephen A. who put it perfectly, which is if you make them punt twice, you win the game.
Yep.
And Florida kind of feels like that a little bit, where if they have to punt a few times, maybe settle for 3 a few times, like, you might not feel so good about them, but they've been good and shockingly good. And I thought Kyle Trask, last year definitely put himself on the map a little bit, showed that he could play, but I didn't anticipate him looking this good. But as you've mentioned, it is a Dan Mullen offense, so you do need to take that into consideration. But we'll see. But Florida's an interesting team, and I think that they're clearly going to win the SEC East at the very least.
Do you think they're the second best team in the SEC?
I do. I think so.
I do too. I think
so. I don't think there's any, to be honest, outside of Alabama and Florida. I mean, what SEC team would you put in that category?
I mean,
with them?
Georgia, but they just don't have a quarterback.
Yeah, and everyone, I feel like with Texas A&M, everyone always talks about how eventually it's going to be their year with Kellen Mond, and it never is. So I'm not going to put them up there either.
Hey man, Texas A&M beat Florida. No, I'm just joking.
They did beat them, but I don't know, man. I don't know. But I'll say that no, I don't think there's really any team in that category with Bama and Florida. I think they're far and away the 2 best teams in that conference, and I think they're going to be playing for the conference championship and for the right to go to the college football playoffs ultimately. So interesting what's going on there. Now we got to talk about a team that I know you and me cannot stand this season for whatever reason. The Indiana Hoosiers, undefeated. Somehow, some way, I don't get it. I mean, I guess I shouldn't be surprised. It's 2020, man. I mean, every crazy thing seems to be happening this year, but they're finally going to play a good team. That's right. They're playing the Ohio State Buckeyes this weekend. And, I've never really rooted for Ohio State.
Yeah,
neither have I. But as much as, listen, I'm never going to be upset by watching Ohio State lose. I want to say that. However, I'm not going to be that sad if Indiana gets blown out against Ohio State, because I just think Indiana is just so freaking overrated.
I think they're the most overrated team in the country. I really do.
I just don't think they've been all that impressive. I mean, listen, we've talked about Michael Penix Jr. He makes some nice plays. He's athletic. He's gutsy. But, I mean, listen, here's who Indiana's beaten, just to put in perspective, okay? Penn State, Rutgers, Michigan, Michigan State. Combined wins out of those 4 teams, 3 wins. Okay?
I mean, you said it right there. I mean, they haven't played anyone legitimate. And even in those games, they almost lost. I'm not going to say they should have lost to Penn State, but my feelings about that game. We've talked about that many times by now. Obviously, Rutgers is Rutgers. Michigan has been mightily disappointing, obviously losing 2 straight after winning their opener. And then Michigan State, who we talked about coming into the year as maybe being the worst team in the Big Ten. So this is their first test of the season. Listen, if they come out, I'm not saying they have to beat Ohio State, because at the end of the day, how many teams are going into Columbus and beating Ohio State? Not many. But if they could put together a good game plan and come in there and actually compete and give Ohio State a game, I will give them credit where it is due. Until then, no, I don't think Indiana's the ninth best team in the country. I think that's due to a lack of, honestly, good teams this year. There's been obviously a lot of opt-outs, an unprecedented season, just a tough adjustment for many programs to make. So listen, they've won 4 straight games. They fell into that top 10, but it's time for them to sort of put their money where their mouth is and put together a good game against Ohio State.
And not even just Ohio State. They got some big games coming up. They're going to be hosting Maryland the week after Ohio State, who, who knows what they are, but they destroyed Penn State. I mean, we witnessed that firsthand. And then they have to go on the road to Madison and play Wisconsin, who's always tough. So listen, these next 3 games are going to really show us how good Indiana truly is. If they can go 2-1, you know what? They'll have my respect. If they can go 2-1 through the stretch, because that's a tough stretch for any team. But to be honest, I don't see them winning more than 1 game these next 3. Maybe Maryland at home.
Yeah.
But I can't imagine them going to the Horseshoe or Camp Randall and beating 2 of the premier programs in the Big Ten in Ohio State and Wisconsin. So we'll see. But listen, they're not a bad team. And listen, they're not a bad team. And they're debatably a ranked team like in a normal season. I think they are. They got some players.
Yeah.
But we're talking about the 9th best team in the nation.
Yeah,
here.
no.
To be honest, a team that I think is better than them, which I kind of want to talk about real quick, is the Oregon Ducks, who we watched play Washington State. And I was sincerely impressed with Oregon. I wasn't sure what to expect with them. Losing Herbert, losing some of the guys on that defense. Penny Sewell, who's arguably the best player in college football this season, opted out. Wasn't really sure what to expect from the Ducks, but they came out, and after getting kind of punched in the mouth early in that game against Wazoo, they kind of kept it together, remained calm, and ended up beating them 43-29. So, listen, I think Oregon is definitely the best team in the Pac-12. I don't think there's any question about that. Is this the first? Can this be an Oregon team that can maybe make a run of that playoffs, Pat? I mean, I personally am not so sure, just because I think the Pac-12 is kind of weak, but they're impressive at the very least.
Yeah, the thing is that the thing about the Pac-12 in general was they got to such a late start that it's going to put teams at a disadvantage from making the playoffs. And they were already kind of at a disadvantage just because the Pac-12, like you said, is so weak. But let me ask you, because Oregon has been impressive. Me and you love CJ Verdell. He's an animal. He's going to be a beast at the next level. I was impressed with their quarterback, Tyler Show. I think that's how you pronounce his last name. Listen, I was impressed. They did lose Penny Sewell, but their offensive line has still been formidable. I do want to know, though, from your perspective, what separates Oregon, an undefeated Oregon team, from an undefeated BYU team? Because I think if both of those teams were undefeated at the end of the year, I honestly think I'd give a little bit of leeway to BYU just because of their quarterback play.
It's tough to say because I think that what we have seen from the committee the last couple of years is they really value conference champions.
Yeah.
And that's why that one year, I don't know if you remember when TCU and Baylor both were 1-loss teams, and the Big 12 named them co-champions, and neither got in. And the thing about BYU that's going to be fishy is that unlike that Notre Dame team that went to the playoffs a few years ago, because that team played some big boys, and which is a big reason why they got in as an independent. I mean, yes, BYU has not played the easiest schedule in the world. They played a couple good teams, but still have not played the craziest schedule, okay? And they're not a conference champion because they're not in a conference. Oregon, on the other hand, albeit the Pac-12, which is a conference which outside of Arizona State and USC,
maybe USC, which is
is
a poor man's USC from years ago,
right? They might give them the nod just because of that they would be Pac-12 champions. Now, Would I rather? I think it would be more interesting to see BYU just because of Zach Wilson and
Yeah,
because what he's done. And I mean, who wouldn't want to see a potential top 10 quarterback go up against some guys he's going to be drafted amongst? I mean, we're talking about, Trevor Lawrence, Mac Jones,
Justin
Justin
Fields.
Fields. I mean, we're talking about, some of the best here potentially. So, it would be really fun and interesting to see. Now, deep down, which team do I think it honestly compete better with those guys? Probably Oregon. I mean, I think BYU is a pretty good team. I think they're definitely being carried by Wilson. I don't know how they couldn't be because BYU just doesn't have quarterbacks like this all the time. But those are two teams that are in a weird position, and obviously we're not going to get a clear picture until things kind of play themselves out. But I personally would like to see BYU, but I do think Oregon can maybe hang with those guys a little bit better. I don't
Yeah.
know if you agree with that or not.
No, that is definitely fair. I definitely would rather see BYU just because of the quarterback play, but it's going to be interesting, man, because the Pac-12 got off to that late start, which may end up hurting them. And if they finish undefeated, it'll be interesting to see how the committee values them as well as BYU. Let's transition into. Actually, no. Do you want to take a quick commercial
You know
break?
what? Let's take a break because we need to hear a word from some of our wonderful sponsors here at Com Radio. So we're gonna take a quick break. But when we come back, though, let's get in some NFL. It was a crazy week, and we'll get into some of that conversation. It's New York State of Mind here on Com Radio. State of Mind on Com Radio. And we're going to get right into some Week 10 kind of recap. We'll also preview tonight's game, but let's talk about some of the games that already happened. Let's just get out of the way. Let's do it.
I mean, listen. You let me have the floor all those weeks where I was upset back in freshman year when Odell Beckham got traded. I'll let you have the floor right here. I mean, it's one loss. It counts as one loss. It just counts as a regular loss. But I'll let you have the floor just because of the way it ended.
I'll start out by saying this. So I saw a tweet today from a Bills beat writer, or that I follow on Twitter, and he said it perfectly. He's like, "Listen, I feel a lot better about this Bills team today than I did yesterday. Just taking a deep breath, materializing everything that happened." I'll just say that it's one of those losses that it's not like you're upset because the team like blew it or something. Like, obviously, I think Josh Allen did not play his best game. I thought that the second half game plan offensively was pretty uninspiring. I wasn't very impressed with the game plan from Brian Daboll, the Bills offensive coordinator. But listen, I'm sitting here with the ESPN win probability open, and right before that snap, okay, at 11 seconds, when the Bills called a timeout, right before the Hail Mary, according to ESPN, their win probability for the Bills was 96.8%, And it's just one of those things where, I was telling Pat on the ride here, it's, it's one of those plays where you see it once every year, maybe once every other year, a Hail Mary that actually gets caught for the win. We saw it with Rodgers, that Thursday night game several years ago with the Lions.
Hell, it happened against the Giants when Rodgers did it in the playoffs a couple of years ago, too.
Exactly. And it just so happened to be on the Bills.
Yeah.
And I think for the fans that are criticizing how they played that Hail Mary, I think that's kind of ridiculous. They had pressure on Kyler Murray. They nearly sacked him on that play. He was running for his life. And at the end of the day, I know it was DeAndre Hopkins, but he was triple covered by Tre'Davious White, Jordan Poyer, and Micah Hyde, who not only are arguably the best players on that defense, they might be the best players on the entire roster for the Bills. I mean, you'll take that 3-on-1, even though it's D-Hop. You're talking about 3 Pro Bowl players, and one of which was an All-Pro last year, first team All-Pro. I'll take that and take my chances. And it was just one of the 10 times, that he actually would catch the ball, And listen, at the end of the day, it was a great game. And even though it was definitely both teams struggled at times, both teams had their mistakes, there were turnovers, there was a little bit of everything. I do got to tip my hat to both quarterbacks because both were incredibly clutch in that game.
Yeah.
And I'll just say that, I was impressed with both of them, how hard they fought, how hard both those teams fought. And listen, for the Bills, listen, it sucks. It sucks they lost a game that they clearly should have won. It sucks that the Miami Dolphins are now kind of creeping in on the AFC East a little bit at 6-3, just a half game back of the Bills. But they lost to a really good team, a playoff team on the road who's not even in their conference. So as far as seeding, as far as standings go in the division, the Bills are still okay. It's not, this wasn't a backbreaker. And their next 6 games are quite winnable. They only play one team that poses, I think, a real legit threat, which is the Pittsburgh Steelers. That's kind of it. So, I think they are okay, but man, was that a heartbreaking, just a loss that takes, more than a few hours, an hour or two to get over. I mean, that one makes you wake up this morning feeling like, like crap, honestly.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you want to add anything to that, Pat.
No, I mean, you pretty much said it all. It was a really great game. I have love for both of these quarterbacks, both of these staffs. Obviously, McDermott's been great since the second he was hired. Kingsbury's proved a lot of people wrong. It turned out to be a good hire. It turned out to be a good pairing, obviously, with Kyler Murray. I love Kyler Murray. He's one of my favorite players in the league, especially to watch. Like you said, both quarterbacks were very clutch. I thought Allen made a couple bad decisions in the second half, but he followed that up with a really clutch drive. And man, Cole Beasley can play. Listen, I'm well familiar with Cole Beasley from his days with the Cowboys. I used to hate him when he was on the Cowboys. He used to destroy the Giants every single time that they faced each other. But he still got it. He's not some addition that the Bills just brought in just to sort of hang in there and be their third receiver. No, this guy can really contribute. He made a bunch of big time grabs yesterday. He had 11 catches for 110 and a touchdown. Obviously, Stephon Diggs had a great game as well. He had that clutch touchdown. End of the day, great game between two great teams who I expect both to be in the playoffs. And if you're a Bills fan, you can't hang your hat on this loss too much. A guy made a great throw, made a once in a lifetime or once every few years play. Like, it sucks, obviously. I can't really imagine it, but got to move on because you have a very good team who I expect to win their division and move on to the playoffs and compete for an AFC championship. So can't hang on your head on it too much. I'm sure you want to transition now. Is that okay?
Yeah, no, we can go for it because honestly, this is kind of charted territories for the show that
your team lost.
I'm the one in the loser seat over here, and Pat, you're the one all happy here on Victory Monday.
Yeah,
because the Giants have resurrected their season with one win, which once again NFC East, hilarious that the Giants are actually 100% of this division, despite how, especially after that Buccaneers game when everyone seemed to be so down on Daniel Jones. Yeah. And then he just follows it up with just having probably the best game of the season.
Yeah, no, listen, no turnovers for 2 weeks straight. That's certainly an improvement for Daniel Jones. I guess I'll start off by saying, yes, I know they're in the mix for the division to win the division. But I've been more impressed by Joe Judge. I really have. This team has gotten better throughout the season. They have competed all season long, aside from that 49ers game earlier in the year, which is what I wanted coming into it. I really just wanted to see them go out and play hard, show some promise, and play together, which is something that the Giants haven't done in a few years. Now, in terms of wins and losses, they have a 2-game winning streak. They are heading into the bye, and they play the Cincinnati Bengals the week they come back, which I think is a very winnable game. However, I don't want to get my expectations up too high, but I genuinely think that they are the best team in the division. I genuinely do. That's not going to say that they should be a playoff team. That's not me saying that they're as good as other NFC or AFC playoff teams. But when it comes down to it, we know what the Washington football team is. They're not anything. They need a quarterback. I love Alex Smith. He's been very inspirational. He actually had a really good game yesterday, but their roster is just simply not good enough. And the Giants beat them twice already. The Cowboys are on their 4th-string quarterback, and they have a head coach who the players aren't buying into, and the defense is really not good. So I think we could sort of remove the Cowboys from that discussion as well. And then it comes down to the Eagles and the Giants. Frankly, I think should have beaten them the first time that they played if Evan Ingram caught the ball on that third down, and they beat them yesterday. So I do think that the Giants will hopefully win this division. I think they should. Will I be very upset if they don't? No, because they weren't supposed to anyway. And because at the end of the day, I'm just happy that Joe Judge just came in and sort of set the tone and created a nice culture. Because at the end of the day, the team is playing really hard. I don't know if the statistic has changed, but coming into yesterday's game, they were first in the league in takeaways, their defense. Like, that is something that is very impressive to me from a defense that does not have much talent on it aside from James Bradbury. One thing that I don't know if you saw that I do want to add in before I let you go is that DeAndre Baker, the former quarterback for the Giants, had all charges dropped today against him for attempted robbery. And they actually asked Joe Judge about the prospect of him coming back and re-signing with the Giants because Baker said that he wanted to. And Joe Judge said, quote unquote, wish him the best of the luck in the future. We've made the decision we think is best for the program. That is all I have to say about that. This is why I love this guy, because he is set on creating a culture, no nonsense. Let's get better every day. Team first culture. And that's all I really have to be excited about right now.
I mean, listen, man. I mean, I'm looking here at 538, which is a kind of a probability statistics website here. And listen, the Giants right now have a 21% chance to win the division, and it's also a 21% chance to make the playoffs, of course. But I mean, listen, that's not nothing, and it's going to come down to how they finish ultimately. Like
Yeah.
you said, because they have dug themselves in this hole. I mean, ultimately they're 3-7. They got a lot of tough games coming up past the Bengals, like you've mentioned. But listen, this division is no good, as we've talked about. And if the Giants can just go 6-10, which means, listen, you beat the Bengals, you beat the Cowboys, and then you maybe beat the Browns at home, and you kind of go from there.
I mean, the Eagles' schedule's tough too. They play Seattle, they play the Green Bay, they play the Saints, they play the Cardinals. Like they have a tough schedule coming up. It's really going to be close either way. But what really might come back to bite them is that Thursday night game.
Yep.
That Thursday night game.
It's gonna definitely be that one, because that one right now is literally the difference between them being in first and them being in second right now, which is again crazy to think, because I thought for sure about 5 weeks in the season, 6 weeks, that Giants are, I don't want to say tanking, but they're rebuilding. They had no shot, and they might find themselves in the postseason potentially. Now, of course, we'll see how things play out. But end of story is the NFC East is terrible, and it will be kind of almost a toilet bowl of a division to see who wins. I do really quickly want to talk about Tua real quick and the Dolphins before we take a commercial break. But Tua's 3-0 now as a starter for the Dolphins, coming off another win over the Chargers. And, people are starting to hype him up a little bit, saying Tua's the best quarterback in the division. The Dolphins are the best team in the AFC East. And I'll just say this about the Dolphins. So, the Dolphins, I do think, are a good team, and I do really think they are a playoff team. Brian Flores is a great coach. He's proved it now once again this season that he's legit. That defense is playing lights out. They've got some nice, young playmakers on the offense. Tua's been pretty good. I do think that we all need to take a deep breath about the Dolphins, though, because the way they have been winning has been very, in my opinion, very unsustainable, in my opinion. Ultimately, this team, for once again another week, didn't even have 300 yards of total offense. And, the difference in this game, they won by 8, was because they blocked a punt and recovered it inside the 5-yard line, and scored a touchdown right off of that. And we saw the last 2 weeks they had defensive touchdowns, a special teams touchdown. And I think that, with the Dolphins, listen, they were a pretty good team with Fitzpatrick before all this happened, They were, a 500 team. But you can't expect things like defensive touchdowns and blocked punts to always happen and kind of go your way every game. And I think that the Dolphins, like I said, have good players and have clearly are going in the right direction. This rebuild's been going very well in South Beach, but to start proclaiming them that they could be, that Tua's the best quarterback, you know, could be the best rookie quarterback this season that some people are saying, and that the Dolphins are this, sleeper Super Bowl team. I just think everyone kind of just needs to relax a little bit because ultimately we're talking about a team that's very young, that's got a rookie quarterback under center, that's had some kind of fluky things go their way the last couple of weeks. So I don't know. I'm not ready to sit here and proclaim them, you know, the new champions of the world or whatever, but they have been good. But that's my opinion. I don't know, Pat, if you have any differing thoughts on that, but
I there no, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that they're a Super Bowl contender, but I do think that they could make the playoffs and potentially win a game in the playoffs because their defense is actually really legit. Brian Flores is coaching his butt off, like you said. They are a playoff team, like you said. They've won 5 straight, and looking at their schedule, these are not locks, but I'm expecting them to win 3 more straight. They play in Denver, which, by the way, different discussion for another day. Drew Lock has looked awful the past couple of weeks. They play at the Jets, which is the Jets, and then they play Burrow, which will be a good game. They play the Bengals in Cincinnati. So those are 3 winnable games for them. They're certainly a playoff team. Tua has looked good, but to sit here and proclaim him as the best quarterback in the division is foolish because he's played 3 games, and we need to see about his health and his consistency. You got to remember his first start didn't look too good. The defense sort of carried him to that win. But listen, the past two weeks, you got to give him credit where credit's due. At the end of the day, they went into Arizona and beat the Cardinals in a shootout, which is really tough to do as a rookie quarterback. They beat the Chargers. Obviously, they have their own issues, but Tua's look good. I think he has a promising future. Obviously, his health is going to be contingent on that, but we got to see because as we've seen with rookie quarterbacks, they have some high highs and they have some low lows. And he'll probably have a week where he comes out maybe against the Chiefs or the Raiders or the Patriots or even the Bills in week 17 where he doesn't really look that good. So just because they have a rookie quarterback, there's always going to be that variable where you don't know really which team you're getting. And because of that, I think it's kind of foolish to say that they're a Super Bowl contender, but they're definitely a playoff team. And if you catch them on the wrong day, I could see them winning a playoff game.
No, definitely for sure. So we're going to take a quick commercial break. We're going to quickly talk about the Monday night games tonight and talk about the NBA. That's right. There's news in the basketball world. How about that? New York State of Mind here on Com Radio. And we're back from the commercial break. And quickly, we'll talk about this Monday night game just because there's really not much to say about it. It's not the most exciting matchup. It's a game that I probably won't really watch much of, if anything. Vikings, Bears, 2 teams that are really just kind of.
Hey, Vikings have been trending upwards a little.
They have, and Dalvin Cook has been great down the stretch, and the Bears proved they were definitely some phony pretenders when they got off to that 5-1 start. They've lost 3 in a row. Foles has looked terrible. Their offense has looked terrible. And there's not really much else to say about the Bears other than that. They just really have been a very unimpressive team. Feel bad for Allen Robinson that he's just can't get a break. Guy can't get a good quarterback.
Hey, contract year. Don't be shocked if he ends up somewhere else next year.
That guy should look to go somewhere.
Pack his bags.
Exactly. Just get out of Chicago, or maybe Chicago gets a quarterback. I don't really know, but he needs to get out of there. Kirk Cousins hasn't been very good this season either. It's just not. This is a game that really is just featuring a couple nice young players, some good defense, and that's kind of all you can really say. I guess really quickly, who's winning this game?
I struggle with this. I really do because the Bears have been awful. The Vikings have been trending upwards. Dalvin Cook has been a beast. But the Vikings do struggle in Chicago, as a lot of teams do, let alone, we got to remember, it's Kirk Cousins in prime time. So we don't really know what we're getting here tonight. I'll get the slight edge to the Vikings just because they've looked better and because Dalvin Cook has been on a tear. But I just think this is going to be an ugly game in general, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I think this game's going to be probably pretty low scoring, pretty brutal, frankly, to watch. Um, I'll also go with the Vikings just because I think that Dalvin Cook could probably just carry the Vikings to a win and get a few good plays out of Thielen and Justin Jefferson, and you know, you'll go from there. But I just think the Bears just got nothing going on right now. I'm not very confident that in Nick Foles to really do much of anything today against that Vikings defense. But I do want to talk about the NBA, which is, you know, all of a sudden kind of woken up a little bit. Chris Paul, a son. I mean, I think this is an interesting trade. I'm intrigued, to say the least, because this will, have him with Booker and Ayton. I mean, listen, I'm not saying that the Suns are, some championship contender, but you got to start wondering if that's a for real playoff team now.
Yeah, because we looked at the Thunder heading into last year and like, oh, whatever, they're rebuilding. They have Chris Paul, like they'll be an average team. Finished fifth in the West. We've seen what Chris Paul has been able to do, even at his age. This guy's a competitor, and he's a first ballot Hall of Fame for a reason. This guy's one of the best point guards to ever play the game. Obviously, he's not in his prime anymore, but pairing him with Devin Booker is very intriguing. Though the Suns did give up a decent amount to acquire Paul, you can't really fault them just simply because they have failed to attract any premier stars in the past few years. And you don't want a disgruntled Devin Booker. You want to make him happy. And he has said he's come to management in the past and has said that he wants to make the playoffs. He's never made the playoffs. The Suns did go 8-0 in the bubble this past season, which was very impressive. But obviously, they dug themselves in too big of a hole to actually make the playoffs. But I think adding Chris Paul along with Devin Booker and DeAndre Ayton, some other good pieces there, I think they'll make the playoffs this season, and good for them. I don't think they're a legit contender, just simply because the West is absolutely stacked. You got obviously the defending champion Lakers, the Clippers are coming back, and the Warriors are returning. So I don't think they're that much of a contender, but I do think that they'll make the playoffs.
Yeah, I agree with you for sure. They're not contenders at all, but I like this move though because I
Yeah,
just think it takes some of the pressure off Booker to just let him go make plays. Doesn't need to do everything for that team
yeah,
now. And also, I think this could help DeAndre Ayton just having a good facilitator, a good
absolutely.
passer, a point guard who can get him the ball in good positions for him to score. So when I saw the move, I was a little surprised. Didn't see that coming, but I think it's a good move too for both teams because even though OKC went to was the fifth seed last year, I still think they know deep down they really cannot contend in the West, and it was just kind of a fluky
Yeah,
kind of thing for them. And they acquired some young players. They got a pick.
I do want to point out OKC. Sam Presti has done a phenomenal job rebuilding. They have 17 first round picks from now until 2026.
Yeah, I mean
That is
and on
ridiculous.
top of that, they still have a couple of nice young, promising players on that team. So listen, they're going to be, an interesting team to keep an eye on. But I thought that trade was a pretty good trade. And then definitely real quick, got to talk about, this Dennis Schroeder to the Lakers rumors and also these Rockets rumors real quick. First of all, I will say about Schroeder, I actually think that'd be a great get for the Lakers. I've always been a huge fan of Dennis Schroeder. I think he's a pretty underrated player in the league, big time playmaker. So I think having him with LeBron and Anthony Davis would be dynamite personally.
Yeah, really productive, had his best season of his career last year. And when you take into account what the Lakers gave up for him, I mean, Danny Green, who's on a bad contract, and the first round pick, which is toward the end of the first round. So
And they don't need it
they
anyways. They
free
just
up
won the
cap.
championship.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
free up cap and pick up Dennis Schroeder. Fine by me. I mean, let's transition into James Harden real quick. They're running short on time, but supposedly he has told management that he wants out. Obviously, Russell Westbrook said he wants out as well. The Rockets said they're comfortable heading into the season with both of them. I do think he's going to get traded, and he said that his preferred destinations are the Sixers and the Brooklyn Nets. So what do you think about that?
I personally don't love either place for Harden, to be honest. I just think that I don't know why you want to go play with Kyrie. To be honest, I think Kyrie's kind of a disaster in the locker room. He's something about him just gives me weird vibes. So
Well,
I
I
think
will add, him and Kyrie are very good friends.
you know,
Supposedly. I mean, I don't know. I don't know them personally, but
we'll see. We'll see. And then Sixers, I don't know. I mean, the Sixers are definitely could use a piece like him. I just don't want to see him go to Philly, to be honest.
yeah. No, honestly, I think he would fit well in Philly because I'm assuming that they'd have to trade Ben Simmons in order to get him. So pairing Harden with Embiid could potentially be
it could be good,
nice.
and it would make them definitely a legit team in the East. But I don't know if I love just the thought of it personally.
I guess we can end on that.
Yeah, I guess one of that note. Sorry to any Philly listeners we might have just upset with that take, but
sorry, the SNS show.
Exactly. But that's all we got here on this Monday evening. Once again, we'll be offline, just pre-recorded stuff on YouTube. For now, we'll let you know when our new date and time is for next semester. But it's been a fun semester, let me tell you that. And all I can say is stay safe, stay healthy, and we'll see you guys next week. New York State of Mind here on Com Radio. Thank you for